Good morning. Just a moment. Oh. And here we are in presenting mode. Squares and square roots. Woo! Our objective for this lesson is find and approximate square roots. Awesome. So, we got a couple of examples before we get started on exponents and square roots. Right? Just a reminder. So how would you undo addition? That's called subtraction. So the opposite of subtraction, hopefully, we get is addition. How do you undo multiplication? Go backwards. You would divide. It's called division. And how do you undo division? It's called multiplication. Whoa! So let's look at exponents. This is your chance to do a little bit of squaring. So pause the video right now. You pause the video. All right, hopefully you pause the video. Here's your answers. 1 squared is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. What's 3 times 3? 3 times 3 is 9. 7 squared, that's 7 times 7 is 49. And 11 times 11, 11 squared is 121. Woo! So how would you undo squaring a number? It's called a square root. Woo! What's that look like? Right? So the radical symbol, that thing right there, is called a radical. It is used to represent the square root. Okay, that's called a radical, or the square root symbol. Right? Every positive number has a positive and a negative square root. So there's always 2 answers for a positive number that's being for a square root. Right? Why? Why is it got to be so much harder than normal? Well, I'll show you. Check it out. So 3 times 3 is 9. And negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. Right? Because a positive times a positive is a positive. And a negative times a negative is a positive. Right? So the square root of 9 is both 3 and negative 3. Right? We've got a special symbol for that. It's a plus and minus put together. It means both positive and negative. So I'll let you know now, if you've got a test and the question says, what's the square root of 9? And you just put 3, you're wrong. The answer is positive 3 and negative 3. Moving on. So here's a chance for you to try a little square root practice. These are all perfect squares. This is a good time to pause the video. Really, pause the video, do these. All right, I'm trusting you. I assume you actually paused the video. Square root of 1, right? That's just plus or minus 1. 1 times 1 is 1. And negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. Awesome. Square root of 4, plus or minus 2. Square root of 16, plus or minus 4. Square root of 25, plus or minus 5. It's getting tricky on the other side. Square root of 64, plus or minus 8. Square root of 81, plus or minus 9. Square root of 144, plus or minus 12. And then the last one, not in your normal times table, square root of 400, plus or minus 20. Let's move on. Right? A negative side outside the radical means that we're only asking specifically for the negative square root. Right? So a negative square root of 9 would only be negative 3. Negative square root of 49 would only be negative 7. And a negative square root of 100 is only negative 10. That's why we have the negative outside the radical symbol. Right? Square root of a negative number is impossible. Right? You can't do square root of negative 25. There are no real number answers. Why? Well, positive number times positive number is a positive number. A negative number times a negative number is a positive number. There's no squares that result in a negative number. Therefore, there's no way to get the square root of a negative number. Yay! Okay, so we figured out how to handle square roots of perfect squares, right? Whole number solutions to square roots. What are we going to do when the square root isn't a perfect square? I'll tell you what, you're going to use a calculator. because you can't do the square root of 3 in your head. That's not going to work. So here's some examples. Square root of 3, it's 1.73205, blah, 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 blah. It goes on forever. Square root of 12 is 3.46410, blah, blah, blah. And square root of 28, 5.29150, la, 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 right? You need a calculator to get exact answers from these. And even then, you have to round them. Oh, goodness, Mr. Tiger. What if we don't have a calculator? Well, there's a couple different ways that you can get an approximate value for a square root of a number that's not a perfect square. So our example, square root of 4 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Square root of 9 would be 3, right? 3 times 3 is 9. So what's the square root of 6? Well, we know it's somewhere between 2 and 3. Know what Mr. Tiger forgot on this video? Square root of 4 is plus or minus 2. Ooh, way to go, listener, for paying attention and noticing that typo. Right? Factoring square roots. Okay. Right? So we have a non-perfect square. So we can break down what's inside the radical into factors and then try and find a square root inside of it. Our example, square root of 12. 12 is just 4 times 3. So we get the square root of 4 times 3. So we can split that up to the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. The square root of 4 is 2. So now I have 2 times square root of 3. And you can just write that as 2 square root 3. Okay? Here, I'm going to give you a chance to try on your own. Here's some of them. Once again, this is when you pause the video. If you're stuck, what you need to do is you need to find the factors under the radical. So for the first one, square root of 18, we could say that 18 is 2 times 9. Right? Square root of 9 is 3. So for square root of 18, we get 3 square root 2. Okay, so you keep on trying the rest of these. Pause your video. Really? I'm watching you. All right, I assume you paused the video. Here we go. Square root of 8, you would get plus or minus 2 square root of 3. Square root of 24, 2 square root 6. I'm not saying the plus or minus. Square root of 48 plus or minus 4 square root of 3. I just said I wouldn't say it, and I did anyway. Oops. Square root of 54, 3 square root 6. Square root of 80 is 4 square root 5. Square root of 90, you guessed it, listeners, 3 square root 10. And the square root of 72, 6 square root 2. Finishing up our video today, we've got a summary, which I think is a good way to end a video. 5 main points. Square roots are both positive and negative numbers. You got a new symbol. It's a plus sign on top of a negative sign to show that it's positive and negative. Negative square roots are negative. So if you have that negative symbol outside the radical, your answer is only negative. Square roots of a negative number are not real, don't exist. Non-perfect square roots can be estimated by finding the closest square root higher and lower. So the square root of 10, we know the square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 16 is 4. So square root of 10 is somewhere between 3 and 4. We can also factor, right? So if we find what's underneath the radical, 28 is the same thing as 4 times 7. Square root of 4 times square root of 7. Square root of 4 is 2. So we get 2 times square root of 7. All right, so that is your square roots and radicals for today. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. A lot of you say you're going to, but I only had 16 subscribers when I checked yesterday. Trying to get internet famous, right? Go home and like and subscribe. And this is just the awkward part that I should be cutting out of every video, but I'm not.